Hello, everyone. This is your host, Sanjeev Goyal. This month again, we brought an amazing alum of IIT with us, Amit Roy. Amit doesn't really need any introduction, but I will still summarize it a little bit for all of you. Amit is IIT KGP graduate, 1970, chemical, and he evolved, I will say, or he transformed himself where he was instrumental in putting, even in his graduation project. Let's talk to him about his Georgia Tech work, what he has done. That's something really fascinating to me, how a young graduate comes to America and end up building something for his space. Amit, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much, Sanjeev. I'm delighted to be here.
So, Amit, my first question is how a young graduate coming from India comes to Georgia Tech, does his PhD, and end up building something for his space. How it even happened?
Well, after I graduated, I was going to join an institute, and when my advisor said, I've got a project for you, and the project is to design a heat shield for an experiment that Georgia Tech is going to send up in space, and it was called Long Duration Exposure Facility. And there are many universities which got little cubicles to put in whatever experiment they wanted. And Georgia Tech had a cubicle where they put in transistors.
So sorry to interrupt you. That's fascinating, but I'm thinking I'm a young student studying in IIT right now. Do you think they have a shot like that to build something for this space? I'm still not able to, contain my enthusiasm, and the story you have more than the heat shield is how can it is possible somebody sitting in IIT KGP comes here and builds something for NASA?
Well,
it's
Georgia
very
Tech
interesting.
Georgia Tech said, you come out, the theoretical knowledge, and apply that theory and see if you can convert that into something that will work. And I used theory. I didn't use any computer. I used very simple, basic principle to design this system. And I went to the NASA Center in Virginia, and there were people with this big computer program. And during those times, they had all those cards, and all I had was 5 sheets of paper. That's it.
Wow. What a story.
And
what a story.
I went through my calculation, and they couldn't find any fault. They said, okay, let's build it. And we did. And it worked. And I was there on the launch of Space Shuttle when it went up. Wow. And then after 8 years in the space, that experiment, it was brought back, and I visited to see the experiment, and it survived the outer environment. The whole idea was to moderate the temperature between very cold and very hot and see how the transistors and other electronics would survive in the outer space. And it survived. So it worked.
Amit, I can tell you that's going to be an amazing story. I'm pretty sure some students may even write you when they listen to this. This is phenomenal, in my opinion. And this is and for me, being an IITian is really a proud moment that somebody comes. Which year are you talking about?
This was in 1977.
Wow. That's even before our time. That's amazing. That's
1977.
And fast forward, you did PhD, and then you joined International Fertilizer Corporation. And within 12 years, you become the CEO. And probably you were the longest lasting CEO of that organization. Correct me if I'm wrong, 22 years. How the journey even happened?
Yes, I was there for 22 years, the longest serving CEO. I left even when the board kept on saying you need to stay back. Wow. And I say, it's time for me to leave. You need some new blood. The idea, the International Fertilizer Development Center, as the name suggests, was a fertilizer center for developing fertilizer suitable for agriculture in developing country, which is tropical and subtropical. And that's what I worked on. My PhD thesis was on developing new fertilizers. And although I became CEO, where most of my work was with the head of state, with the governments, I still dabbled a lot in the lab developing new products. So
Once an engineer, always
I
an
never
engineer.
forgot. I never forgot my roots, and I did that, and I enjoyed it. Many a times over the weekend, I'll be in the lab.
So, can I say you are an expert of food? Because what you are really doing it is you're making it this phenomena or this challenge we are dealing with today. We are expecting to grow to 10 billion people by 2050. We all know that. We can't cut any more trees. We can't burn any more forests. So you are working in this space for more than, I will say, 3 decades.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about what you think as a human or as a species, what is our future? 10 billion people, how are we going to even manage?
Well, I always say, and I repeat what Norman Borlaug, the father of Green Revolution, who I worked with very closely, who was on my board for many years, and he said, and many others, that every human being that comes in this world has the right to nutritious food, and that's given. Every human being who is born is given. Today, we're facing enormous challenge in terms of the food security, particularly now with the Ukraine-Russia war and the Russia not renewing the export of grain from Ukraine. India banned the rice export of non-basmati rice, which India is the largest exporter of rice, and also exporter of wheat and other kinds of things. It is a big challenge. It is a big challenge for all over the world, particularly for developing country. When you have short supply, the prices go up. They don't have the money to buy. What does it mean? It means there are a lot of people who are going to be very hungry and going to bed hungry. So we have a huge challenge on our hand. The food security wise, there are two issues. Of course, the population, as you suggested, is growing, so we need more food. But with the population, the diet is changing. It is important to understand that in many of these countries, as the economy develops, the people eat more meat. And eating more meat means you have to produce more grain. So the diet change will have as much, if not more, effect as the population growth. So we have two barrels that we are facing today.
Amit, I have a question, and I'm not sure how accurate it is. And I'm really passionate about food, even in a investor into alternative protein. There is a company called Avery. You might have heard about it. So I'm one of the early investor. I believe that we have to solve this problem. I don't know if Avery is the only way. There are hundreds of ways. So, but talking about fundamentals, what I have been told, almost 63% of the agro production goes to animal feed. Is that correct?
Let's take in terms of the meat production. If you take beef, where hamburger is a big issue, the steak, you require 8 tons of grain to produce 1 ton of beef. Wow. And for pork, it is 6. For chicken, it is 4. For fish, is lower. For bread. So the more meat you have, you need more. You have to produce more grain.
More grain. Okay.
And when you have to produce more grain, you have to have more land, and you have to have more water. So it is a compounding effect. And to answer your question, it is we have to feed, because a lot of people, as the economy increases, a lot of people are eating more protein, animal protein, and that has a tremendous impact in terms of food production and the food supply. So that is a huge problem, and not to mention the health issue. When you have so much of meat in your diet.
Yeah, that's like, again, that's a food choice. But people like you and me, our job, I believe, is to provide the best value or best nutrient possible for the
Right.
humanity. And the biggest problem we both know is it's not just the current problem. It's not the current water problem. We are already dealing with fresh water because of all this. 3 billion more people will be resident of this planet, no matter what we do.
Exactly.
And we have a huge problem at our hand. So thank you so much for doing such a phenomenal work. You are working on that for almost 30 years, but now you are leading Saskawa. It's a nonprofit, and your dream is to change the world with this nonprofit. So can you tell us a little bit about what is it, why did you join it, and how you believe it is going to change our world?
Um, uh, as a background, the Sasakawa Africa Association came into being after the Ethiopian famine in 1984. You remember 1 billion people died,
Yeah, it was
and
a
you had
big
the
challenge.
concert, Bob Geldof and others, they all came together in terms of what to do for Africa. At that time, the philanthropist from Japan, Ryoichi Sasakawa, he was the chairman of the Japan shipbuilding. He said, "Here I am. Here is Japan. We are wealthy. We have all the food to eat, and we should be doing something." And he calls up Norman Borlaug and he said, "Let's come together and we do something." So it was Norman Borlaug, Jimmy Carter, and Ryoichi Sasakawa came together to form this institution. I was at IFDC at that time. Norman Borlaug was on my board, and he kept on telling me that I need to join the board. And I say, Norm, I've got too many things going. I've got to run an institution. I cannot join that one. Anyway, long and short, year before I retired, I joined this institution as a board member. And then Borlaug passed away, and there was a lady from Africa, Ruth Onyango, who became the chair, and she stepped down, and I have taken over. The idea was simple. Borlaug said, "I brought about the Green Revolution in India and Pakistan and other area with a simple technology. Right seed, right fertilizer, right management, water, and right policy." And that's what did the job. So that's what he did. He essentially took the same idea and went to 20 different countries in Africa. And with President Carter, they had direct access to all head of state.
Yeah.
And they set up demonstration plot, shows it worked, and that was the beginning of it. And right now, if you look at the entire value chain of agriculture, the weakest link is the transfer of knowledge. Is the transfer of knowledge from research to the farmer. And that's why when I developed the strategy, Borlaug's strategy was any new technology, take it to the farmer. And I changed it to walking with the farmer. You see on the background, it says walking with the farmer. And the idea is the farmers are farming the land much longer than you and I have been there. They understand the problem, they know the issues. A lot of time they don't have the resources or the knowledge to solve it. So the approach we have taken is anything we develop has to be in collaboration with the farmer. That way the adoption will be a lot better. So I'm going to different countries to put that approach. And right now, there's a lot of people who think this is a better approach. And the farmers are with us. We sit down and talk to them, come to a solution, and they adopt it much faster than they did before, because then you understand their socioeconomic system. Outside, they solve in terms of the scientific and science and what brings more yield. But a lot of time, we don't take into account the socioeconomic situation of the farmers.
Yeah, it's a huge, complex problem. We both know that. And people like you are working on this for decades, not 1 or 2 years. I mean, you have worked on this problem for almost 4 plus decades. So it's fascinating. The question really I have on the food is, I still, it baffles me. I believe food is one of the most important thing humans need for their survival. Of course, air and clean water and all of that. And we are not able to still agree at a global level how should we grow food, because I believe the challenge today, in my opinion, is it require a global collaboration. It can't be, oh, you do things in India like this, you do things in America like this. We need a major collaboration so we can feed 10 billion people by 2050. Sorry, I'm pushing you, but that baffles me. Why such collaboration in spite of UN, in spite of amazing WHO and so many great organizations? We are not able to do that.
Well, it all comes back to the trade issue. That's it. Everybody is trying to protect their own trade. That's what it is.
Mhm.
Today, our biggest challenge is Africa. People don't realize how big is Africa. If you
Oh,
take the African continent, you can put United States, you can put India, you can put China, you can put Japan, Vietnam, whole of Europe, and you still have land left over. It is that large.
wow,
It
I
has
didn't realize it.
it has 54 countries.
Yes, that
It
I'm
has
aware.
all the resources. Everything is there. And their population growth is 2.5%. And
Oh,
their productivity increase is 1.4%, 1.7%. So they are always falling behind in terms of their food security. And they have to import.
oh,
So now with the food situation now, they have to import more at a higher price. So what do they not do to bring in food? They have to bring in food. You can't have peace on an empty stomach.
of
You
course.
cannot have peace. You cannot be an environmentalist on an empty stomach. You can't do that. So the food, and you can't have a social stability. If there is no food, people are going to be out in the streets. So to answer your question, why? I think a lot of people are looking at, right now, WHO or WTO is saying, open border trade is the way to solve this problem. But look, every country is going to look at their own interests first, irrespective of if they agree or don't agree.
Agree.
They're going to close their border to make sure I have enough food for my people.
For my
That's how.
citizens, I get it. I completely understand the emotion. So let's talk about Africa for a minute. And so, as an outsider, I've never been to Africa. I travel a lot. I've been to 40 plus countries, but never been to Africa. So maybe one of these days I'll tag along with you just to see and learn. What is really the challenge there? Is it the natural resources like water or something else? Or is it the desire? Or because when I look at in the movies and I look at documentaries, seems like there is no water.
Well, it's a combination of many factors. First of all, the soil. Soil is the fundamental of what you grow.
Mhm.
And African soil are very, very poor soil. So the first order of business is to bring back soil. Water is an issue, but in many places water is available. The question is bringing back soil. Then certainly, bringing back nutrient. The bigger problem is infrastructure. The road infrastructure is very poor.
Mhm.
To anything you move, it becomes very, very expensive.
Mhm.
That's why importation of food or anything in the coastal area is a lot cheaper, even if you produce food in the interior of the country. To bring it to the coastal where the population is much more expensive
Of course.
than importing food.
Wow.
So the infrastructure is very poor. The governance, is also a big issue. In terms of resources, Africa is very, very well endowed in terms of resources. If you look at the resources, countries are essentially exploiting Africa, taking the raw materials to their country, processing and sending it back.
Yeah.
So I'm telling folks, you have raw material, you process, you create employment, you send it out. Don't let others take it. Give you an example. You go to Mali, they have huge amount of mango. You drive through the road, you have mango tree, mango all over. An Italian company has come in, they're making juice out of the mango and homogenizing it, sending it back to Italy, and then they're adding a few things, packaging it, sending it back to Africa.
What a great business.
Yeah, and my question is, hey, Mali, why don't you do it yourself?
No, I agree with you. But again, that's a bigger problem. And, so let's talk a little bit. I have a couple of other questions around food for you.
Sure.
What is your take on factory food? Like people are producing Impossible Meat, Beyond Meat. We have organizations like Memphis Meat, Kiosk Meat in Singapore. Phenomenal startups. Even I'm seeing companies producing even cheese through the fermentation process. So, what's your take on that?
These are all new and interesting development, producing the cell culture, what is used to produce this thing. I think it has a niche market. I don't think it will be big enough where it can feed the world. It will have niche market, I think. And it will probably be a niche market, and particularly in developed country where the people are able to pay the expensive prices for it. I think it will be there, but it is never going to replace the food for the masses. That's my take on it.
So you are saying is the way they are producing this food is not sustainable in terms of the dollars, or is it not sustainable overall? I mean, I understand your point because it's too expensive today. It's very expensive to have a Memphis meat steak. I get
Right.
that. And the chicken is so cheap. So other
Yeah,
companies, the chicken they are producing is ridiculously expensive. So the cost is not justifying. So we will never be able to bring it down because they are using so much natural resources to even produce it today.
that's correct. And what you have in the food system, the food prices that we have in the market, the external factors are not internalized. And what I mean by that is, for example, the environmental externalities, what is required to produce, is not factored into the cost of food.
Got it. Yeah.
But on the other side, what you're producing in the lab, those are factored in, and that's why the prices are so high. So until and unless those external factors are internalized, it is going to be very difficult to compete. And but you have to look at the poorer people, and I do believe that trading would be the way to solve the poverty problem. Right now, 860 million people don't have enough to eat. And the COVID, the pandemic, and all these have really made situation very, very difficult.
So that's almost in 1 in 6 people
are food insecure.
Wow.
And then nutrition is another one. And for the first 1,000 days, the children have to have the right nutrition for their brains to develop and all that, which are becoming very, very important today. Now, there are things that are happening which are very positive. This is the year of the millet, which the Indian government has got United Nations to declare 2023 is the year of the millet.
Oh, nice.
Now, millet is a crop which is drought tolerant. It grows in less water. It is tolerant to drought. It is nutritious. In our place, bajra, jawar, we eat that. People eat in the village, and they're very nutritious. And that's what is coming back. Is and getting away from the corn and rice. A kilogram of rice requires between 1,000 liter to 5,000 liter of water.
Wow.
a kilogram of rice.
And how about millet?
Millet is much, much lower, and I do not know the number, but it is probably between 100 and 200.
And
But
if we compare it with the chicken or the beef?
beef, I mean, if you're feeding them corn, corn requires, 3 times the amount of water. Rice is the most water, it requires the most amount of water is rice.
Yeah, true. Wow.
Between 1,000 liter to 5,000 liter of water for 1 kilogram of rice. So in India, there are many in the villages, Rajasthan, in other Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, they've got local varieties which are drought tolerant rice, which can grow with much less water. So they bring those back.
Working on it. That's great. So let's talk about, because our primarily audience are our alums, and they're all, they're brilliant like you. And one day, I'm sure some of them will go and develop something for NASA or maybe Indian NASA. Who knows what are going to happen, or ISRO, basically. What I find fascinating, especially working with our alums in the last 5 years, there is a passion, there is an excitement to solve a problem and create an opportunity. So where do you see opportunities in this ecosystem? How can our alums help and generate more value and opportunities for themselves? Because what I'm hearing from you, it's a trillions of dollars worth of problem if people can solve it.
There's a huge opportunity, particularly for graduates from IIT and even the IITs themselves. Without fertilizers, we're not going to be able to grow food, given. But the fertilizers that were developed in United States, in Tennessee Valley, were developed in 1960. It hasn't changed.
Wow.
So this is the opportunity to come up with new products which are more suited to tropical and subtropical agriculture, which are the developing country. IIT is very well equipped with the brain power, with the infrastructure to be able to get in that and to be able to come out with products. There's research going on at Georgia Tech in terms of new catalysts to reduce the synthesis of ammonia, which has been one of the biggest breakthrough in 19th century. Sure, IIT can do it. One of the things is phosphorus, which is, without phosphorus, there is no life on Earth. There's no life. Every bone in our body has phosphorus, every DNA, RNA, muscles, everything has phosphorus. Without it, no human being or the plants can survive. Oh. And it is a finite resource. It's a finite resource. And that's what I worked, when I did my PhD, and even now I'm writing a book on that. And India imports 96% of its phosphorus from around it imports. It is not only important for food, it is very important for industrial sector, electronic, in terms of the new battery technology. All these things today are depending on phosphorus. And I think IIT, in my opinion, should get into recovery of phosphorus from the waste stream right now. Do research on coming up with new products. This is, I think, is a big, big area that is yet to be explored.
That's huge. Amit, that's fascinating. I can think of I'm sure tons of people will be inspired with our conversation, and especially you are giving them very objective advice around what can they do. Phosphorus is definitely one big area, and I'm going to do my own research after our call to understand it. How can we go back to IITs and suggest them that, hey, you should think of creating, if you don't have research around phosphorus, research around fertilizers, and how can we help 1.4 billion people, and India is the largest democracy in the world. So that's the beauty of India. At the same time, we have more need than any other country because we have a limited land size. We are 1/6 of America. We are not as big as China. So we have to do something now, just like future is now. We can't wait for anybody else to solve our problems. I
That
agree.
thing needs to be done right away.
Yeah.
And I tell them, I said, this is what you can do. Opportunities are there. There are people with knowledge who can at least guide you how to do
We
some of
have
this.
you.
I'm writing the book which Cambridge is going to publish,
Nice.
Phosphorus. And Morocco is, and remember, the access to phosphorus, access to resources drives your foreign policy.
True. 100%.
If you look at, I don't know all the detail, if you look at which country received vaccine first, or the country that provides phosphorus to India.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Okay.
Morocco is the largest phosphorus producer in the world. Morocco, Jordan, and all those places, those have high phosphate deposit.
Nice.
But anyway, the foreign policy is dictated by access to resource.
100%. We need that. And it's a huge challenge. I mean, whether it's water, whether it's phosphorus, or even iron ore, I mean, the possibilities are endless. But talking about food, which is both of our passion, and it's a need of the hour, I will definitely urge all the people who are listening to our interview, think about how can we make the difference in the agro industry. Amit gave us two very, very interesting ideas. Think what can we do with phosphorus or for phosphorus. And second is ammonia even, because there are a lot of research needs to happen. And when we talk about fertilizer, that itself is a very complex science because even in India, we have different regions, different kind of a soil, and even the rain is a big challenge because some part we have a lot of rain, some part we don't have any rain. And on top of that, different kind of crops, and we have rotational crops. It's a very complex system. So
Right.
that's fascinating, Amit. I love that. And I'm sure a lot of people will be inspired. I have a couple of interesting questions for you.
Sure.
You are IIT KGP grad. Do you have any interesting story to share with our audience?
Yeah, I do. And I will do one at the very beginning when I joined and one at the very end when I was leaving. That way it brackets.
By the way, you never leave IIT. Once you are in IIT,
you never leave IIT. When I graduated.
Still stuck there.
When I graduated. When I first became a freshman, joined in 1965, the India-Pakistan war broke out. And all the freshmen, we are the one who had to paint all the windows black, put all the tapes. And I distinctly remember we were standing in a balcony one morning, 10 o'clock, and here comes the Indian fighter jet and the Pakistan fighter jet. They were up there, dogfight, and it hits the Pakistan jet and it was going down. And I can remember all the people, got on their bicycle and here they went to see if they could get any. That was still something, it still is fresh in my mind. And so that's one thing. And the next one, as
but a story of courage and excitement and being crazy. I think we are all
it was crazy. It was crazy. And then as we were leaving, we had finished all the coursework. We had just to submit our thesis or the report. And then the mess workers went on strike. So what we had to do is we would have classes in the morning. In the afternoon, we took turn in our dormitories to start cooking. Hell, we didn't know how to cook. I mean, we all came in, did our own things, and and we just put things together, remembering some, trying to get some ideas from parents who were living in Kharagpur. Anyway, we did that. But in our hall, there were a couple of people there, they caused trouble all the time. Here we are cooking all the vegetables, and they come with 2 cans of coffee and dumps it into the vegetable. You can imagine what kind of a taste it was. But heck, we didn't have any choice. Everybody ate it.
That's a funny story. Well, we were all crazy even at that time.
Yeah, even at that time. So those are things you remember. Of course, there are many things happen in between.
Yeah. That's so true. And, we build a bond for life, and people like you, we just continue to inspire all of us all the time. So, Amit, if you can go back in time and meet anyone, who will that be and why?
Um, I go back, agriculture is my passion. And in 1965, when the war happened, Pakistan-India war, and later on I found out from Borlaug, he said, when the war broke out, they were sending a shipload of high-yielding variety of wheat seed from Mexico going into port of Bombay, and there they are going to divide. Half of it will go to Punjab of India, and half will be Punjab of Pakistan. But when the war broke out, that ship got diverted to Singapore, and they split and one ship went to Karachi, other one went to Bombay. So in 65 that happened. So I do believe that food still is a passion, but the whole green revolution came about because of one prime minister in India, and that is Lal Bahadur Shastri. He doesn't get credit, but he's the one, Jai Kishan, Jai Jawan. That is the person who did it.
He's a phenomenal leader. Based on all
Yeah,
the books I've read, I mean, this person
yeah,
has changed the future of India, actually.
he is the one who did that, who realized the importance of agriculture. And my chair of the board was a guy named David Hopper from Canada, who lived in a village in Uttar Pradesh, and he was very instrumental in convincing later Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister Gandhi, that he got to accept that. And they got $5 million from Canadian and US and gave it to Mexico to get the seed. And that was David Hopper. So it was a lot of interesting stories about that.
That's fascinating. Amit, do you have any parting thought for our audience?
Um, we all come with a purpose in life. As we sit back, finish our career, and hand over the baton to the next generation, we always have to think, what are we leaving behind for the betterment of the humanity?
That's so profound. That's so profound. Well, for our audience, I'm really inspired, and I'm inspired for several reasons. One is, of course, our own alum doing such a phenomenal work, and he is working tirelessly for more than 3 decades to make that difference. It's our time. We should find ways. How can we help the humanity? I see there are tremendous opportunity around fertilizer and phosphorus. Number two takeaway for me is, if we take what is built somewhere else and we try to just somehow figure it out how to use it, it's not going to work. So we have to build solutions which are more local. So almost like in a startup world, we always talk about think global, act local. And that's what Amit is talking about. We have to build solution for our local environment, whatever it is, whatever the environment it is. And now we have quite a few IITs together. If we work, we can solve any complex problem. So this is not the most complex problem we are dealing with today, I believe so. And another interesting thing I want to say, once you are an engineer, you're always an engineer. Look at Amit, he became the CEO, but he's still engineering the food.
Yeah, it still is. I mean, even now, even today, I was talking to somebody and he gave me a challenge, and I spent the whole afternoon trying to come up with how to solve that problem. Once an engineer, you're always an engineer, and you always want to take a challenge.
Thank you so much, Amit, for your time. I really had a lot of fun. I'm sure your interview will inspire tons of IIT alum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very grateful for this opportunity.